I went to 3, got a really good platoon and deployed. We're doing shipboardings, and then the USS Cole got bombed,
Hmm.
and we got tasked with a special boat team to go down to Yemen and set a perimeter. I was a sniper at the time, and I set a sniper overwatch, and the special boat team had a perimeter around the boat, and it was like, look, anybody comes within 500 meters, you shoot them.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Hey everyone, it's Brian Dickinson. If you're enjoying these stories, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It helps more people find these conversations, and it keeps the mission alive. And if you want early access to new episodes and to support what we're building, consider becoming a Spotify paid subscriber. Your support means everything. Now let's jump in so others may live. Brandon Webb, it's been, how long has it been? 30 years?
Yeah, at least 30 years, right? Well, maybe not. Well, then it's 98.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. But
Yeah,
it's a long time. It's been
yeah.
decades. It's nuts. Yeah, it's so cool just to see where you've been. It's such an honor to have you on the show. So Brandon Webb is, man, I'm just gonna look at your Wikipedia because it is overwhelming. I went snowblind again just staring at it. Um, Starts with what's interesting to me is born June 12th, 1974. That means you're 4 years older than me. So you'll always be older than me. So that's
Where
good.
were you? You were born. You were June 16th. I read up in your bio, right?
Yeah, 1974.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But yeah, you're aviation rescue swimmer to start, Navy SEAL Sniper course, head instructor, multiple combat tours, founder of Hurricane Group LLC, New York Times bestselling author. You're a media commentator on snipers and special ops. You got the SOFRA, blah blah, man.
Yeah, blah blah blah. You covered it all. You covered
check
the
out
important
check out
stuff.
Brandon Webb. I think most people know who you are and what you've done, but it's amazing, man. Overachiever is not even saying even close. I mean, you're that guy. You keep hammering, and now you're like a pilot living in Lisbon, interior decorator. Is this what I saw
Yeah,
recently?
yeah. No, I don't know why. I think maybe because it's on my mom's side. My mom's like super creative her whole career and an entrepreneur in her own right. But I just have this like I've always had this like creative gene, and I think really what brought it out for me was when was living in New York for almost 9 years, just being around that world. And I had an ex girlfriend who turned into a really good friend of mine. He was a stylist for Victoria Beckham, and just kind of surrounded in that creative environment. I just started reading up on interior design and started. I did my last 3 places, and my friends were like, "Man, you should like start a business." I was like, I really just do it for myself, but it's fun. It's why I enjoy fiction, even though I consider myself probably a stronger nonfiction writer because
Hmm.
I started the media business back in 2012, and I think I've written several thousand articles for SOFRA and a
Hmm.
few other sites, but the fiction it's challenging. It's a totally different style of writing, but
Hmm.
you can be incredibly creative and just kind of, you know, paint yourself out of a corner, so to speak.
Hmm.
But yeah, I like being creative, and my she's in design school in London right now, so
Oh, wow.
she's carrying the torch.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And I agree. So my first couple books were nonfiction, and it's one thing to be able to tell a story that, exists because it's easier because, I mean, it
Yeah,
can be hard, it can be traumatic, but the content is there. UTA has my first fiction, and it was kind of based on something that occurred on my second deployment that, ASW wise, it couldn't necessarily talk about, but using that kind of as a not, historical fiction starting point, and from there, the creativeness, it's just fun, but
yeah,
it's difficult because
Yeah.
there's a lot of directions, names, and you do so much research in those scenarios to make it as real as possible, because you want to make it believable. But yeah, the creative part, like I could see writing, definitely a series in fiction. And it's, you can do anything. You could have a third arm coming out of your forehead if you want to go super nuts, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, for me, the most challenging part was realizing that generally you want to explain things in a nonfiction book, first person, but in fiction, typically it's better done through dialogue. And so
Mhm.
just getting a habit of like talking in dialogue with multiple characters, you feel like schizophrenic at times because you're
Yeah.
putting all
Yeah, and I
this.
don't I don't like to talk much, so
Yeah.
that can be
I
a
remember that
challenge.
about you. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Um,
let's go
yeah.
back in time. So I know the red circle really paints a good picture of your childhood, but for those that are gonna pick up the book now, anyone who's listening to this, definitely pick it up. And all your books. You're a great author. But tell us about your childhood. I mean, it's very, very unique, but
Yeah.
I think it makes you who you are for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I will try and keep it brief as possible, but yeah, I was born in Canada. My parents met in Malibu, California. My father was Canadian, had moved to Malibu because he got kicked out of the house. My grandfather's just like really tough, kind of was a career electrician for Canada Electric, kind of blue collar to white collar, retired, became an entrepreneur. He owned a big resort trailer park outside of Toronto on the lake, um, and kicked my dad out for not cutting his hair. And then my dad was like, you know, 17-year-old in Toronto, like getting into trouble. I think there was some type of drug dealing involved, but he had to like
Did we just
get
get
the
an
hell out.
exclusive?
Yeah, he had to get the hell out of out of Canada, and he moved to Malibu, started a landscaping business, picked my mom up hitchhiking with her
That's a
best friend.
big change. Toronto
Yeah,
to Malibu. That's a long ways.
I think because my dad was also he was an amazing hockey player. Like he probably could have went pro, but just things happen, life happens, and I think because of that, the era of his time, right? This would have been like the late 60s, early
Mhm.
70s. It was Laurel Canyon, Crosby, Stills and Nash, all the like music, and my dad was also a musician. He played the drums,
Hmm.
and I think that's what brought him out to California. And then he's driving his old 50 57 Chevy and picked my mom and her girlfriend up. They were hitchhiking back from the beach, and he asked her out. And long story, he's like, "Oh, come to Canada with me." And my grandmother was like, "There's no way unless you put a ring on that finger." And so they got married, moved to Canada, had me and my sister. Um,
Back in Toronto?
uh, no, this was actually BC. So we're
Oh,
up.
nice. So you upgraded.
We were, yeah. So, we're up in Kimberley, British Columbia, which is still a really great ski resort. The local town nearby was just booming because the mining and construction. And my dad got in construction, started a company, um, and I was kind of just a real terror of a kid. I think probably a lot of us have similar background, just high energy, probably ADHD, some form of ADHD. And I was driving my mom crazy. Like I drinking gasoline, bleach, you know, she left me alone in the bathtub. I just took her razor blades and like cutting all my fingers. She came back like a scene of The Shining, the whole
Oh
tub
my
full of
gosh.
blood.
Yeah.
Blood. Yeah, it was just
Poor
like a
mom.
horrible. Yeah, I know. My mom was like, "Oh my god." She actually called child services on herself. Like, "Hey, I'm like, I want to hurt my son. Like, you need to help me. Like,
Oh,
he's driving me crazy."
that's a proactive
Um,
step, man.
yeah. But anyway, my dad ended up losing his company during this big financial crisis in Canada, and him and my mom had always had this dream to sail around the world. So they bought a boat in Vancouver, 47-foot catch, moved the family on the boat, and off we went to we sailed from Vancouver to Ventura Harbor in California. And then my dad worked in construction. He was working tilt up construction in LA, making good money and saving up, saving up. And then we took a year off when I was, I think, 11, and went to Mexico for almost a year, like homeschooled. And it was that time, that age was incredible. Like I was running around Cabo San Lucas before there was any hotels or anything. It was just donkeys roaming the harbor,
Yeah.
and it was incredible. I was spearfishing, sailing. I had a little sabbat on the boat. It was incredible. And I came back, and probably one of the pivotal times in my childhood, when you think back, was my mom. I was back in school, and I was kind of surfing and getting in a little trouble with the kind of surf skate kids. And my mom and dad were like, "You should really get a job." And I had this shitty job working at a boat store, cleaning basically as a janitor every day after school.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom came home one day and she said, "Hey, this scuba diving boat wants a young kid to work tips for weekends and summers, and they'll teach you how to dive. They'll certify you to scuba dive, and it's for tips, but the tips are really good, and they're willing to give you a tryout." So I did a 1 day trip on the dive boat Peace out of Ventura Harbor. It was a beautiful, I think almost 70-foot boat, had a hot tub, private chef.
Wow.
And I worked that summer, had turned 13, and the captain, Roger, taught me how to scuba dive, and it was mostly all ocean dives. And I remember being scared shitless, especially at the end of that first summer. I've written about it before in a couple of my books, but it was the first time I remember really being scared, because I was becoming a competent diver, and you were diving alone. Like typically, one of the crew would take a turn. We would just, okay, we'll cover for you. You go on the dive, and then we'd rotate, and we'd dive like 3 to 4 dives a day for all the passengers. So you usually get like 1 dive or 2 if you're lucky. But I remember we were at San Miguel Island, which is the northernmost of the Channel Islands, right by Point Conception. It's super stormy, and it's really hard to get to because it's usually the weather's rough and the passengers don't like rough weather. But we were out there, and we were on the backside of San Miguel and had amazing dives, a big seal and sea lion rookery on the back of the island. So it's amazing. You're diving with all these sea lions, and we anchored up for the night, fed the passengers, went to sleep, and then the captain wakes me up at 2 a.m. This guy, Mike Roach, and he shines a red lens in my face. He's like, "Hey, well, Brandon, get up. You need to go dive on the anchor. It's stuck." And I had done this before in the daylight. It's because it's just faster to send a diver down if the chain gets wrapped around the reef or something. Because the weather was picking up, and we needed to move to calmer water. So he's like, "Hey, the anchor's stuck. Get your ass up." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I started thinking, man, and then this captain is crazy. Mike had actually got sponsors and did a great white shark hunt at San Miguel Island, exactly where we were anchored up for the night, like chumming blood, just hoping this great white would show up so he could spear it. Like, this guy was like crazy. And he's like, now he's telling me to suit up and go get the anchor unstuck. And I'm like, all I could think about was this great white shark hunt. It's fucking dark. It's 50 feet down. I'm by myself. And I was like terrified. And
How old were you?
I was 13. I just turned 13.
Oh my
And I'm
gosh.
like, yeah, this is fucking crazy. I was like, all right, I got my suit on. It was just like one step at a time. I was like, okay, my suit's on. James, the deckhand, shoves this big fat waterproof dive light in my hand. I walk up to the bow, and they open the bow, and then boom, I jump in, and I was like, I'm going as fast as I can down to the bottom. And I remember seeing the biolume sea lions like zip it by me, and that actually was comforting, because I knew if they're around, there's no sharks in the water. So, but anyway, I get down there, and this chain's wrapped around this like Volkswagen bug size reef rock, and the technique was you take your regular out, you just blast a bunch of bubbles, and that lets them know to like pay out the chain. And then I swam it around. I did it all and got up to the surface. And then I was like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think that I mean, you know this because you've written about it as well. We always make this much worse story in our head about fear than it actually is. And that was my first, a really good lesson in fear. It was like,
Yeah,
okay,
at a young age.
yeah, super young age. Um, I was like, okay, it's just not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And take small steps. You don't have, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get my suit on. And now I got to get my tank on. It's like
Yeah.
just one thing at a time. And then at the end of that summer, I think the second year I worked, another big lesson for me that I'm extremely grateful for was, I mean, I worked my ass off on this boat. And I mean, I was filling tanks, drying people's towels in the dryer and swimsuits at night, cleaning the toilets. But I had a freaking blast, man. Like, I remember thinking to myself at 14, I said to myself, like, like, I don't ever want to not have a job like this where I'm having fun and enjoying it, where it
Mhm.
really doesn't feel like work. And so anyway, that was that was my childhood on the dive boat. And then uh, about a year and a half later, my father was like, "Hey, we've been talking about sailing around the world, and we're definitely going to sail to Australia. We actually immigrated. They got all our papers to immigrate to Australia, and we're going to take this trip." And by this time, I'm still counting in half years like you do as a teenager. Like I'm 15 and a half, about to
Yeah.
turn 16. The last thing I wanted to do was go on this trip because I'm like, now I'm actually making. I'm in high school. I'm getting paid like a deckhand wage, living at home, so I have no bills. I'm getting selling my like trading my lobster to the sushi restaurant and my fish and getting food credit and making great money. And I was like, I want to do what every other 15-year-old wants to do, is hang with their buddies and like chase girls, get my driver's license. But my dad's like, no, we're going on this trip. So off we went. And this is my junior year. We sailed from Ventura, did our typical Baja, uh, down the coast of Baja to Cabo, then over to the mainland of Mexico, hit ports all the way down to Acapulco. And Acapulco is a destination for people going to South Pacific because you can sail
Mm.
straight across with one tack with the trade winds. And so we had spent 30 days at sea, no land, until we hit the Marquesas Islands, which is the first chain in the South Pacific or the French Polynesia. And I'd done my entire junior year in about a month and a half. So it was done and mailed back. This was back, you had to like send it via post. And I remember getting to Hiva-O Island, and the bottom composition in Tahiti is all reef. And I had this huge argument with my dad because I was the kid diving on the anchors. Like I know what holds and what type of bottom condition. And
Mhm.
I said, Dad, we need to switch out the anchor, the bow anchor, which is a plow type for mud and sand. We need to put the Bruce up there because it'll hold better in rock and reef. And he just was like, looked at me like, you little punk ass kid, know it all. And the first night we drug the bow hook because in the South Pacific, you set a bow anchor and a stern anchor right in up against the beach practically. And we had dug the bow anchor, and being the humble 16-year-old I turned 16 in Acapulco. I got up that morning and basically told my dad, fucking told you so. And we,
You know
and
what, he
we,
is strong with this
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And we were just like this. So I made it. We went to the Tuamotus, and I was just like not happy. And by the time we got to Tahiti, we had another big blow up, and that's when my dad was like, "Look, I think you should leave the boat. Um, I think you don't want to be here. Your school year's over. Why don't you call the owner of the dive boat and see if you can just like go back and and it was like we had a huge fight. It almost got physical, and then we just kind of things calmed down, and we had a talk, like a serious talk. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready. So I found a boat that they needed help sailing to Hilo, Hawaii, on a catamaran, and got crew on the boat, grabbed the backpack, and I had a few $100s. My parents gave me a little money, I think, too, and I sailed away. And I remember like once we sailed to Moorea and then we started sailing to Hawaii, and I I was terrified. Like I'm not gonna lie, I probably
Yeah.
cried myself to sleep first 3 nights.
I bet your mom,
Um,
it was really hard for your mom too, huh? And
yeah, my
your
mom
sister?
was, yeah, my sister, they were in tears. Um, but my mom said after I left, she's like, it was very peaceful. she's like,
Sure.
she's like, we missed you, and then they would write me postcards and stuff. But I was on my own, and I flew back commercial air to LA. My grandmother was still alive then. She met me and drove me to Ventura, dropped me at the dive boat, and I was on my own. And I remember ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. Like I wanted to fly jets. And then Top Gun came out. It was like even more. But I had this moment of clarity where I realized, this is back before the internet. And I was like
Mhm.
just reading and asking people. And I realized I went to the recruiter and they're like, look, your grades are kind of up and down. And like, you're not going to get into any of the academies and probably not going to get an ROTC scholarship. So you're kind of screwed. You can join, I took the ASVAB and they're like, you scored high enough on the ASVAB, you know, you can pick a really good job, but you can't go right into the pilot. And they were pushing me, I think at the time was that enlisted aviation program they had? I forget what it was called.
I don't know.
But then I read a book.
I don't know if
I
that thing
read,
was real or not.
yeah, probably just a
Start
little,
enlisted and you'll get to
yeah,
aviation.
yeah. It's like the classic recruiter line. Then um, I read a friend one of the passengers gave me a book, Rogue Warrior by Dick Marcinko about founder of SEAL Team Six, and I read Rogue Warrior, and then I was like, you know what, I can do this. I'm really good in the water. Like I've got this, and I'm gonna like just I think people that don't serve have this idea like, wow, you're just like gave up everything to serve your country. I was like, no, it's actually like that was part of it, but I was like just more like selfish, right? Like I just want to prove to myself that I can do something
Mhm.
really hard, but it's all about just me, proving it to me.
Yeah.
Um, and
Appreciate your honesty.
so, yeah. And so I joined the Navy, and at the time, you couldn't get a direct contract to Buds. You had to pick a
Mhm.
job,
Right after the
and
first Gulf War. Yep.
yeah. And I remember being at Sacramento, and the Filipino recruiter or the guy, this PN, whatever, he's like, hey, he was with my recruiter, and they're like, hey, you can do this aircrew SAR contract, E4 bonus, blah blah blah. And my recruiter,
And
rightfully so,
$1,000. Don't forget
yeah,
that.
$1,000 bonus, yeah. And my recruiter, rightfully so, he was a bosun mate, like an ABH. And he was like, dude, this is a great job. So I took it. I signed up. Um, but what I didn't realize, it was going to be super challenging for me to get orders to Buds once
Mhm.
I was in this specialty, as you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I joined, and we were probably like right same cohort, right? Like,
Yeah, I was going to ask, when did you go through SAR?
oh man, well, I went to boot camp in '93,
Same
so
as February
yeah,
93.
yeah, I was March. So I think I was like one class behind you in
Yeah.
aircrew and SAR school. Yeah, I remember I was roommates in aircrew for a while. There were Jay DeGroot. I don't know if you remember DeGroot. Um, but so anyway, I went through aircrew SAR, and then you had to pick a rate, and I was like, well, I don't want to be a mechanic, so I chose AW. And then, like we have this amazing time in Florida, and then we go to jail in Memphis, Tennessee, like totally opposite.
Now it's all in Pensacola, so I don't know if they just moved jail or if it's like cooler to
Yeah.
go to A school now.
I mean, Tennessee, as you know, is just, I mean, the base, the town, everything about it was just
Well,
like
and coming from
terrible.
Pensacola and like aircrew and like the galley and everything there was just because it was all officers except
Yeah,
pretty much
5 star.
us.
Yeah,
It
five
made
star,
you
man. We
kick in
went
the
to
nuts.
5 star resort to like 1 star.
Making
Um,
you march and everything.
yeah, yeah, it was crazy.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, so I ended up getting I don't know if we got yeah, I think we did get our squadrons at the end of A school. So I got HS6. I wanted West Coast, and then went through the whole pipeline in San Diego, SEER school, advanced, whatever that was, that advanced sonar school,
Mm-hmm.
HS10, which you were at as well, and then got to HS6, did a deployment, had a really good chief, but the chief left, and then the chief that we got in after him was just not a very good chief. I can say that having become a chief myself later. He was just a jerk. He played favorites. He was the East Coast guy, hated all the West Coast guys, and he.
How was your attitude?
Well, my attitude was I'm just gonna kick ass and get the most quals I can, so they let me go. Like I'm gonna do an amazing job. And what happened was my chief used it as an excuse to keep me, and
Right. You do a good job, they give you more work. Like we
yeah,
can't let you go.
he called the detailer and nuked my package. I found out later. He told him to deny it. And I was like I think I was a senior E4 at this time, but I was a NATOPS check guy, like the only E4 that was NATOPS certified. And I was like, man, this really sucks. But then I was getting on my term was coming up, and then they let me go after that deployment, they let me go to mini buds, and then I passed that, and then they kind of had to let me go. And then I talk about it in the red circle. I got this chief really had it in for me and a few guys, and I had a friend in admin. I forget this guy's name, but he really looked out for me. He called me in. He's like, "Hey man, I just want to let you know, like you're getting totally fucked on your eval." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, this like you're getting the same eval as like the newbie E4." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "That's crazy, man. Like I've got all these quals." And so I remember the chief gave me my eval. I read it and I was like, "Oh, this really sucks." And so I checked the little box that said that I'm going to submit a statement, and he didn't even notice it, because the next day I was taking English class on the boat too, and I handed him like my 1-page like letter to accompany my eval, and it was basically I don't think I had some help too, but it was like unemotional, and it was like, look, this is what military bearing says, this is what this says, and I have all these quals, and I should have been ranked a 4.0 back when we were on the 4.0 system. And it was just the facts, and our new commanding officer Rosa called me and the chief, when I handed him this letter, he turned white because he knew he'd fucked me, and he got like really no justification.
Accountability.
Yeah. And I remember the commanding officer, we had a meeting next day for that week. We're on the boat, we're on the Kitty Hawk, and he calls me in with Chief Carnley, and he sits us down. He's like, "Well, Chief, I've read Petty Officer Webb's statement." He's like, "I'd like to hear from you." And he starts just stammering and stuttering, and the CO Rosa just turned fucking red. And he was like a really good CO, and like a kind of guy you want to go to war with. And he just says, "Chief," he's like, "none of what you're saying makes sense." And he looked at me and he slid me a freaking fresh eval form, and he's like, "Petty Officer Webb, I'll tell you what, just write your own eval." And the fucking chief fucking lost. He turned fucking shades of purple and red, and we walked out of there, and I fucking wrote my own eval. And that's awesome. And I had the next flight out of there to Buds. Like he was just like, could not wait. I went on like the early back. He was like, he wanted me fucking out of there so fast, this chief. But it was a lesson. It was a lesson on like sticking up for yourself, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and that goes so far beyond the military, because you're in life, you'll find those people, those mentors, or managers, whatever. If you're in business, that they are looking out for you, but there's a lot more that are looking out for themselves. And if you don't stick up for yourself, you see it all the time. And people, they'll get stuck in abusive relationships because they know what to expect, but they're not willing to defend themselves. And it's just a horrible way to live.
Yeah. And it's something I really try and teach my kids, is exactly that. Like, look, there are these people in life that, they're going to put up roadblocks, and you got to just figure out how to go around it in a way that doesn't, you still have to play the game, especially in the Navy. You have to yeah, I could have got real emotional and threw a tantrum, and that wouldn't have solved anything.
Right.
I just like, okay, these are the rules. I know the rules, so I'm just going to use the rules to advocate for myself. And yeah, so thankfully that was also a lesson I learned myself, which really came in handy right before I made chief as a SEAL, which I get to. I know we're taking a long time on the old intro,
No,
but
no, it's all
um,
good. No, actually, I want to pause if you're good. Like,
yeah,
there's a few rescue swimmers that listen to this because it's an aviation rescue swimmer podcast. But I'd love to hear about your experiences through RSS. Like, how was that for you? Because
um,
you were well prepped beyond probably most that go through the program, but there's still a high attrition rate. There's the mental aspect, and most people don't work well in oxygen deprived situations. And,
yeah,
they try to teeter you on panic and who's going to make it, who's not. Weed these people out that aren't going to cut it. So how was your
yeah.
experience?
No, I had a I had a great experience. I went through with a Coast Guard guy. He was already a Coast Guard rescue swimmer, and I could just tell just by going through training with him that the Coast Guard has a world class course.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was tough though. Like SAR school was tough. It was the first kind of probably the toughest thing I'd done for sure. Like air crew, I didn't really think was that difficult,
Yeah, it's
but
Disneyland.
SAR school was tough. I mean, it was kind of a great, setup for buds because
Hmm.
you had inspections, you had to do all this stuff and then get up early and perform physically and mentally, and you're put in these challenging situations, and it's very similar environment. Buds is just it's a much longer,
Hmm.
but yeah, it was. I remember I did relatively okay because I had so much experience in the water. Um, the running was probably challenging for me even in buds. I ended up becoming a good runner, but I was never like one of the fastest guys. Excuse me. Um, the and I remember, even the final test for the, throwing everything at you, the spray and the first aid. I struggled with the first aid a bit, and I think I got a little bit of a pass. I remember they pulled me aside and like lectured me, but they let me through. But I had a great experience, and I will say this: I was thinking about the show this morning about coming on the interview. The one I really still keep in touch with, like guys from the community, Chris Rower, um, Eddie, he's in Texas. I forget his last name. He's a total character. Um, a few of the guys I still keep in touch with, but one of the things I really enjoyed about the SAR community is it's a good guys. Like it's an honorable community with a bunch of really good people. And I think the one of the things that in my experience, and I don't have I would say I have a very unusual SEAL experience in that I got out at about almost 10 years of being a SEAL with Chris Kyle and Marcus Luttrell, and we were the first guys to really put ourselves out there and write books, and we got destroyed, man, by the
Hmm.
community, like really destroyed in a very disappointing way. Because I remember feeling like really like I was meritoriously promoted to E6. I was promoted to chief, put in charge of like one of the top sniper programs, and now I'm out and I'm just getting shit on by my own community. And you don't see that in the SAR community, and it's one thing I've written about it on SOFREP many times, and I wish the SEAL community had a professional alumni association that could kind of serve as a bridge between the active duty community and the guys who are out, and just get like provide some exemplary leadership and like guys, this is the way to conduct yourself on the outside. Don't go after each other in the media, on social media, and it's brutal, man. Like I don't know if you've seen it or not because you're not in the SEAL community, but it is
Yeah,
nasty, man.
yeah.
It's
No, it's
super
from the
nasty.
outside looking in. It is, and
Yeah.
it's weird. It's
Yeah.
because there's a brotherhood, but then I don't know if it's greed, if it's you never know what's driving these behaviors.
I, I think it's like I got really into that F1 Drive to Survive series, and you see a little bit of it there. Like just it's hyper competitive, alpha male. And to be honest, a lot of SEALs that make it, I would say the majority of SEALs that make it through BUDS have some type of childhood trauma because
Hmm.
you've kind of learned to deal with this adversity. Um, and so I think that all plays into it. But I just wish that there was an adult in the room to be like, guys, this is the way to behave because it really,
Maybe that needs to be you.
yeah, I've tried. I mean, I've written and tried and
I know
advocated for this professional alumni association, but
it's
it's just
frustrating.
super frustrating to have like this piece of my military career that I'm extremely proud of just feel like because I don't even go to the reunions. I don't even stay in touch with guys in the like maybe three guys I still talk to because it's just too nasty, man. It's like a snake
Mhm.
pit, and that's a shame. You know, it's a real bummer to me as a veteran in the SEALs because I had a great career. I had good memories in the SEALs. I had
Yeah.
amazing experiences, but compared to the SAR community, you just don't see that. You see like guys that are just rooting for each other, and it's just much different. And that's why I'm like really proud of my experience as a SAR swimmer and my
Yeah.
two
Well, we're proud of you,
deployments.
and you're always welcome because
Thanks.
you're a star swimmer. You
Yeah, yeah,
never not. So yeah, I'm sorry
yeah,
that you're going through that. Hopefully that'll change over time, but you can't change other people. You can just change yourself and
yeah,
be consistent, which I've been watching you. I'm a fan, and you've been consistent over time. So yeah,
yeah,
it just sucks. And you're right. So what I've noticed as well, I mean, I get attacked too from being in the military, doing what we do, climbing Everest, just no matter what, you put yourself out there, try to do good, have experiences, everyone's brave behind a keyboard, you know.
yeah,
But you're right
yeah.
that so many people that get into special ops, first responders, there's there's a shared trauma that a lot of us come from, childhood trauma, that we're then chasing that trauma to then have a different result, to have control over it unconsciously. And I know I did that with being a SAR swimmer, to
Yeah.
climbing the highest peaks on the seven continents, soloing Mount Everest, like everything. It took me 40 some years to realize, like, holy crap, like I'm in a vicious circle here, and I need to
Yeah.
work on me. I need to be healthy for me so that I can, represent the community and to bring other people in and to maybe, be a little bit of a light to help others in their journey. But again, it's each individual in their own journey. So I think that it helps me when I know people are attacking me. It's like, man, I don't know what you're going through. I know you're projecting that on me.
Yeah.
Sorry about
No,
that. Man.
that was I remember because I got like um, viciously attacked by a former teammate this is the guy that actually quit Buds in third phase and got kind of like he quit. He ran out of the water and then they blew the whistle. And they thought he was like first out of the water, so he got to sit next to the fire. But he was getting out to quit. Like
Oh,
he
wow.
was locked arms with me. And this is a guy that um, I had always kind of like just kind of like stuck up for he got washed out of he was in a platoon and he got washed out of the platoon dive training and he got put in our platoon and my chief was like, dude, this guy's a shitbag. I'm gonna chief board him and pull his trident. He's like, what do you think, Webb? And you went to buds with him and I was like, oh, he's an all right guy. I was like always stuck up for this guy, and then given the first opportunity, this guy's like trying to tear me down and discredit
Mhm.
my combat experience. It was just like a terrible experience. But you know, and I remember going through this at the time, and I got to be friends with Mark Harmon, who's the actor in
Mhm.
NCIS,
Yep.
and his father was a Heisman Trophy winner for Michigan. I think he was a running
Okay.
back, gave up a professional career in the NFL to join the Army Air Corps in World War II. Was a bomber pilot, lost his plane, his whole crew, flying over to Africa. They hit a storm in South America. And then he ended up going on to fly P-38 Lightnings in China. And like his dad was an ace. It's just a great guy. And Mark was a UCLA quarterback, the quarterback for UCLA, first string. And he told me, he's like, Brandon, he's like, I'm going to tell you a story. Because I was like, man, how can people be this way? He's like, I was a quarterback. He's like, I was like my, like maybe sophomore year quarterback. And one of the guys in the sideline yelled at me, your dad's a fucking coward. He left his crew to die. Because his dad had was flying the Flying Fortress, and they hit this like huge thunderstorm, and the plane started shaking up and breaking apart. And he gave the bailout. And he was the last guy out, and we literally spent 3 days hiking out of the freaking jungle. But he was the sole survivor. So now, Mark's, playing for UCLA, and this guy's like, your dad's a coward. He let his whole crew die. And Mark was just like, I'm like a young man and my dad's gone now. And like, how can people say this shit? But he told me, he's like, to your point, he said, nobody that's personally in a really good place has time to shit on other people. Like they're projecting all their own issues on other people. Cause he's like, if you're successful and happy, you don't have like time to go troll people on the internet or like go way out of your way to like shit on somebody. And that really like helped me out. And you see a guy like Mark, who he went on to be, he could have been drafted into the NFL, but he said he was really wanted to be an actor.
Summer school, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was summer school. He was in like,
love that.
He was like, and I think NCS is the longest running TV show in the history of television. Like
he's crushing it.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. And I remember having lunch at his house. He showed me his dad's Heisman trophy. And I was sitting in his living room because we were doing a TV show together. We were pitching a TV show to CBS. And he had me over to his house in LA for lunch. And Mark's super low key. He drives a shitty Bronco and this like unmarked old police cruiser. Like he's super funny. This guy like could drive anything he wants. And I'm like, man, his wife looks so familiar to me. And then I realized it's Pam. She was the actress on Mork and Mindy. She was Mindy opposite Robin Williams. Yeah. And I'm like, Mindy's making me a tuna sandwich for lunch.
That is wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was wild, man. Because I watched Mork and Mindy as a kid.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
I was like, why does she look so familiar? And I was like, dawned on me. But yeah, Mark is a great guy and really helped me through that period. Because I was like dealing with a lot, like trauma, losing friends in the war. I lost my best friend in Benghazi. Then you're out I've got a family, and I'm just getting shit on by a couple guys in the community, and then it is what it is. But that really helped me kind of get centered and just be like, you know what? And he told me too, like, just be consistent, just steady ahead, and it'll just kind of work
Easier
itself
said than
out.
Done, but yeah, given that perspective of, like you said, if no one that's in a good place has time to be throwing darts, and just sometimes that perspective, because you realize, sticks and stones, right? But the words will hurt if you allow them to. So that's a choice. Don't read, who is it? Mercy Me's manager, Scott Brickle. When I first got back from Everest, he said, don't read the good or the bad comments.
Yeah.
One can like inflate your head, but the bad can really take you down, and none of that stuff matters. It's like, just don't read it. And when my mom was alive, she was my biggest fan. She'd go on Amazon, go after people.
Because my mom was the same way, dude.
I'm like, Mom, no, it's okay.
Yeah, you're like, time out. Like, yeah, my mom's thankfully still alive, but it took me a couple of years to just like teach her, like, dude, just stay out of it. It's just you're just making it worse. But she's still like, she's still watching my back. Like, there's a couple things I've written She's like, you got to take that down. She's like,
Well, that's good.
yeah, you got to take
Good to
that
have
down.
that too.
That's not gonna help you find a partner in life. I'm like, okay, mom, you're fine.
Well, cool. We're just talking. This is great. A
Yeah.
lot of wisdom all interspersed here as well. When you were SAR, did you have any unique experiences? Did you do one or two deployments?
I did too. I did a deployment on the Abraham Lincoln. That was my first kind of new
Mhm.
guy deployment. Then, and that was, I did have a crazy experience on that because this was when I was like head down studying, and I was studying to be a NATOPS examiner, and I was doing my check ride at night in the Persian Gulf, and we were doing we had flown maybe like an hour of night vision, and then we went off goggles, and then we're flying back to the Lincoln, and we had to get gas on one of the destroyers. And you know this, like the kind of protocol was the crewman would spot the deck,
Mhm.
especially at
Yeah.
night, look
Standard
for the
deal. Yeah.
VASI. Yeah, so we'd slowed down. I slid the cabin door open. I was in a gunner's belt, and I remember looking for the VASI, and I saw no lights, and I was like, "That's so weird." And I remember like looking up, like even with the front of the helicopter, and I could see the ship's lights, and I was like, "Fuck, that's not good." And I looked down, and we hit the water.
Oh, wow. Hey everyone, this podcast doesn't pay for itself, which is why I launched Kick Ass, Keep Calm in the Chaos merch line. It's not just about a slogan, it's a mindset, a mission, a way of life. Plus, it's an attention getter as random people see and ask about your dope gear. It provides an opportunity to share your unique story with others to help spread some calm across humanity. Every shirt, hat, or sticker you buy goes straight into keeping this podcast alive, the incredible guests and stories, and the impact of their experiences. Tap the link or visit shop.calminthechaospodcast.com to gear up today. Thank you so much for helping support the mission so others may live.
Yeah, but at very slow speed.
Yeah.
And water started pouring in the cabin, and I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm fucked." And I started screaming for altitude, and Rich Freeze was the first class that was giving my check ride.
Mm.
He started screaming for altitude, and he not only that, but he had the foresight and the experience to start talking to the guys up front, the two pilots, this guy Bennett and Kennedy. Bennett was the pilot. No one liked this guy Bennett. He was just a fucking arrogant jerk, like talked down to all the enlisted guys.
Mm.
Kennedy was the opposite. Kennedy was this like goofy guy, like really into like World of Warcraft, that kind of guy. But
Mm.
everyone loved him because he was always like, I think because he didn't fit in with a lot of the pilots. He'd
Mm-hmm.
always like hang out with the crew and play spades with us, the aircrew guys. But everyone loved Kennedy. But Kennedy actually, what happened was Bennett got vertigo and didn't say anything,
Mm.
and basically flew the plane into the water. And then Kennedy is the one that took the controls and pulled us out. But I don't know how the hell we survived this. Because I mean, when I tell you that water was coming in, I was like, I
Yeah.
looked at my Heats bottle and I was like, okay, I have a chance. But you know what happens? The helicopter is going to go flip upside down,
Yeah.
violently. The rotor will break apart, and I'm on a gunner's belt. I'm not
Yeah.
strapped to my seat.
Yeah.
I'm probably
Pretty much
fucked.
is gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and that all went through my head. But anyway, Kennedy pulled it out of the water because we were just slow, thankfully. And water, I remember like gushing out of the
Mm-hmm.
cabin, and everyone was so shook up. I think it took us three more approaches. Maybe on the fourth one, we actually landed,
Mm-hmm.
and no one, and even the destroyer lost us on radar. They thought we were done. And so
Oh.
we got gas, we made it back to the carrier, and nobody believed us. And I think at the time that Juan John was the CEO, he didn't want any heat,
Mm-hmm.
because it looked bad on the CO, right? But
Yeah.
we all had to write reports, and I think it was Freeze and I both, wrote our reports, and that kind of forced them to do an investigation. Both pilots lost the hack papers, but what happened was they didn't have enough, they didn't leave enough time. Like we all were at fault to light adapt, like to dark adapt, right? From going
Yeah,
from
yeah.
night vision back to flying naked eye in the night. That was what really happened. And then the maintenance chief, he's like, no way, he was a great maintenance chief. I forget his name. But he's like, no way, you fucking guys flew this in the water. Blah. But I remember they unscrewed the tail section and like 5 gallons of seawater poured out. And they were like,
Yep.
holy
Well, how'd that get
shit.
there?
Yeah, they were like, oh my God. But that was an experience.
Yep.
And
It's funny today. I was just on a pod, Into the Breach podcast, and today I just got a collaboration of like a highlight of it, and I'm talking about the same thing. My first flight at HS-10, we hit the water. We're doing just like the whatever, it's your first flight, and junior
yeah,
pilot hits. My feet are just hanging out. I'm gunner's belt, and altitude,
oh,
altitude.
wow.
And I've talked to so many people, and it's crazy because we go on, in ICS, and it's like this never happened, because
Yeah,
just that you don't want to get your wings pulled or whatever. We didn't have wings
yeah.
at that point, but still, it's nuts. Just, I mean, it's a game of inches, right? And we both know people who didn't make it out of those situations. That
Yeah, this
did get.
was this was that year. I remember. I don't know if you remember Gunther. He was
Mhm.
at was it HS? What was the squadron in Japan? He was at that squadron, and
14.
they 14. Yeah, they were flying at night a long approach to the carrier deck, and they flew it into the water. And
Yeah, with
it wasn't
Quinn.
him, but it was his squadron. But they lost
Yeah,
everybody. Like that was the same time period that this
yeah.
happened. And I remembered that I became a lot more proactive as a crew member in the back at this point, and I wasn't a dick, but I was hard on junior pilots. Like I was just like, look, we're all in this together. You
Hmm.
can't just treat us like the help back here. Like and to the point where now fast forward and we had a couple rescues. I wasn't involved in any rescues. We had an ejection. Lincoln had the worst safety record in the fleet. We lost that woman pilot.
Yeah, they
Um,
have 14.
yeah, the 14. I think another 14 catted off the bow right into the water.
Yep.
But then I was on the Kitty Hawk, my second deployment, and this is more like a talk about leadership. I thought going from a nuclear carrier to a conventional carrier was like going to be a super downgrade because the
Hmm.
Lincoln was just a nasty ship, man. It was just like you could just tell like the environment was not very positive, and everybody's morale was low. We had like a collision at sea. We lost 2 planes. Like it was like, man, no one heard from the captain at all.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I'm thinking, man, the Kitty Hawk is conventional. It's going to be even worse. And it was 10 times better
Mm.
because it had an amazing captain. It was cleaner. The crew was happy. And the captain came on the 1MC probably 2, 3 times a day, telling everybody what's going on. It was a stark difference. And it was
Mhm.
all from leadership. Like
Yeah.
one captain was a poor leader. This guy was amazing. And it made such a difference. Um, but yeah, this was when I protested that eval. So I came home after the Kitty Hawk. I classed up with Bud's class 215. I was not in shape, but I remember from the SAR community. I don't know if you remember Kerslack.
Mhm.
Kerslack, he's a senior guy. I think he was an instructor when we were at HS-10, and he came to my squadron. Or no, he went to Bud's. He was an instructor at HS-10, went to Bud's, and then he was my replacement after he quit. He got shipped to HS6, and I was out. We like crossed paths,
Mhm.
and to his credit, he's like, "Yeah, I just wasn't motivated. I was, in the cold water looking at helicopters flying over my head." Like, he's like,
Yeah.
I don't
Own
want
it,
to do
right?
this." Yeah, so he did, out of respect, he owned it. But I went off, and I was not in bud shape because I just come off a deployment.
That's tough.
I could I could pass the PRT, but I was in nowhere in bud shape. And the first 6 weeks, I got destroyed. Like I was out of 220 plus guys, like I was on a first name basis with all the instructors.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, which is not a good thing. Every
Mm-mm.
goon squad, every remedial PT, like 5 a.m. PT. I'm up at 4 a.m. to get an extra half hour with the rest of the fuck ups.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. I had all my calluses tore off my hands. It was so bad, like up to Hell Week. There was a Friday before Sunday, before Hell Week started. The meanest instructors in first phase pulled me aside and cycled me for an hour by myself. I remember Ensign Matthews is my boat crew leader, and he's like, "Hey, we're taking Webb," and he's like, "Where are you taking him?" You know, and they're like, "None of your fucking business, sir." You know, and I was like, "Oh, this can't be good for me," you know. So I'm out on the beach by the rope climb, and these guys, now I know because I was an instructor later, they were just trying to get rid of me. They're like, "Okay, this is Webb's a weak link, and we're just gonna wash him out right now. Like he's no way he's gonna make it through Hell Week." For an hour, they had me, and finally, I don't know. I said something like, basically, like, "You're just gonna have to get, like, I'm not going anywhere unless it's in a body bag." And then they let me be. And from that moment on, they knew they couldn't break me. I breezed through Hell Week. I had no issues. All the psychological games I've already lived through, you know, with these guys like picking on me. I'm like, man, this is like, I've been dealing with this shit for 6 weeks. Like, you guys are just getting it now, but all these little games where they do a 2-mile ocean swim and then line us up on the beach to do it over again. I was like, I just knew it was a psychological game. Guys are quitting, but yeah, after that, I healed up after Hell Week, and then became a very good runner, like good performer. And after that, I became the gray man. Like, no, I had no issues second phase, third phase. And then I made it to team 3. I chose team 3 because I had a friend there and it was only the 2 teams that were actually doing work before 9/11 was team 3, because they were responsible for the Middle East and doing the ship boarding, non-compliant boardings, because Saddam was smuggling oil out of Iraq. And then team 4 was doing counter drug stuff in South America. So I went to 3, got a really good platoon, and deployed. We're doing ship boardings, and then the USS Cole got bombed, and we got tasked with a special boat team to go down to Yemen and set a perimeter. I was a sniper at the time, and I set a sniper overwatch, and the special boat team had a perimeter around the boat, and it was like, look, anybody comes within 500 meters, you shoot them, because this was like a $1 billion warship that 2 guys in a dinghy almost sank. Like, it almost sank twice in the harbor afterwards because they were constantly pumping the bilge. But that was, to me, it was the first time I was like, wow, like 2 guys in this crappy boat with explosives just almost took out this entire ship, killed 17 sailors.
Yeah.
And I could still smell the like rotting food and the bodies because they hit the galley wherever. It's just bad luck for the crew. They were eating lunch, and right where the small boat hit and blew up was right at the galley where everyone was like in line waiting to eat. And that was like a really interesting experience. I was like, okay, the nature of warfare has totally changed. Like, something is changing. And that's when, you know, this whole way we fight wars changed from then on, especially after 9/11. Yeah. But I came home. I was married young, which a lot of Navy guys do, I think, which is it's a bad incentive, Navy, like to pay someone more money if they're married. You know, like, don't do it. They should just get rid of that whole, totally get rid of that financial incentive. But came back, my wife at the time was pregnant with our oldest son, Hunter, and she was like 7 months, and then I switched to a different platoon because I wanted to re-enlist tax-free, and I knew I had a kid coming, and I didn't want to leave my platoon because it was a really good platoon, and they sent me to the fuck up platoon of SEAL Team 3. It was Echo, and they had failed their operational readiness exam. You have to take this final mission test to certify that you're ready to deploy, and they had failed it. They fired everybody and were rebuilding, and the ops officer said, "Hey, Webb, you know, you want to re-enlist, you got to go to Echo." And I was like, really? Like, you're really going to make me go to Echo? He's like, we need good guys there. So, ironically, now I'm in the same platoon with that teammate that came after me and that I stood up for. and end up going to war with these guys because then 9/11 happened.
Mhm.
Deployed to Afghanistan. Did over 20 missions in Afghanistan. A lot of like recce missions.
Mhm.
It was people ask me this like because I get asked a lot like, oh, how come you don't seem like you're unhinged or have any much trauma? I think because and I had a sketchy deployment to Afghanistan. Like we did a lot of good work, but it was like I probably had 2 or 3 near-death experiences in that deployment. Um, from parking on a landmine to getting, I was on a it was a QRF team that got spun up with the Danish. We were like on the helicopter going to rescue these guys, and there's like, no, get off the helicopter. The Rangers are going to go. We got off, 15-minute helicopter gets shot down, everyone dead.
That's
Yeah, just
horrible.
crazy stuff. But
Yeah.
that that deployment, our mission and rules of engagement were very clear. It was okay, we're going to eliminate the training camps, the terrorist training camps that were like prolific across Afghanistan. We're going to put the Taliban out of power, and we're going to try and kill this guy, bin Laden.
Mhm.
Very simple. And we did like most of that, except the bin Laden in the first 10, 11 months. And then we should have packed it up and went home, which is a whole nother story. But this deployment for me felt very purposeful. My son was born when I was in Afghanistan. Hunter was November 30th, 2001. And I came back and I went to instructor duty. But I remember like I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and it's a
Mhm.
big thing is like purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that I look at guys fast forward to 2010, I had friends in Afghanistan that were coming back from a combat action mission, like a direct action mission, reloading magazines to go out again for another hit. And NCIS is like grilling him. Like, why'd this guy get shot? What were you doing? Why'd you go around this corner? It's like, and that's when it got really weird. My friends were like, we don't even know what we're doing over here. Like the rules of engagement got funky. And that's where I think guys have a lot of trauma when they come back from like a Vietnam style deployment where it doesn't make sense. It's a total shit show. And guys have a lot of trauma because they're seeing bad things happen, doing bad things to other people. And they can't really attach a solid purpose behind it. And I think guys have a lot of trauma and hard times with that. And unfortunately, in my opinion, we stayed in Afghanistan 19 years too long. And then you see what happens, with the withdrawal,
Mhm.
um, and then not to mention Iraq, which is another mess. But anyway, that I finished I was an advanced sniper instructor. I got meritoriously promoted to E6. I switched my rate. Actually, this is something that I think I mentioned in the book. Because it was really hard for me to study for the AW exam.
That would be, yeah.
I switched to ABH. I was E6 AW. I switched to ABH. So I'm like reading about like studying about non-skid paint on the aircraft flight deck, and
What is an ABH?
it's an aviation bosun's mate. It's
Oh,
literally
nice.
the guys that are like painting non-skid on the flight deck, among other like
Oh, yeah. That's genius,
non-fun
though.
jobs. Yeah,
That's
I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like take an easy rate, and so I made chief my first time up.
not funny because that was your recruiter, right? Wasn't that
Yeah, full
in
circle, man.
Sacramento?
Full circle, yeah.
Nice.
Um, yeah, that's funny. And I've been recruited down to the sniper course, the basic course from advanced training. And then the guy that recruited me was a SEAL Team 6 guy, Bob. He's like, hey, I feel like it's in good hands, so I'm going to promote you and I'm retiring. And I'm like, what? I just got here. And I gave up my shore duty. I was going to go finish my degree and be a BUDS instructor because it was like a great, basically part-time job.
Mhm.
And he convinced me to do this, which was a shore tour. It's extremely high op tempo, even as an instructor. But it was an incredibly rewarding time because I got to work with, as we were redoing our whole course, modernizing it and learning how to teach better, we pulled in like the best performance coaches in the world. So I had access to like Tiger Woods' mental management coach, this guy Laney Basham that was an Olympic gold medalist, that developed a mental management program. It's all about visualization, positive teaching over negative. Or a simple example of that is if you're teaching kid how to like hit a ball. If you tell him, hey, don't miss, whatever you do, don't miss. Now all he's thinking about is missing, right? Whereas you say, hey, look, eye on the ball and hit it out of the park. Like those are two very different pictures you're painting in this kid's head.
Yeah,
And
like even watch the threads turn, it changes their focus.
Yeah. And so we realized we had a negative teaching style in the sniper course. And I'm like, guys, these are already qualified SEALs. Why are we running it like a boot camp? The standards are high and stressful as it is. Let's just teach better. So we changed the way we taught. We took a 30% failure rate almost to 1% overnight with the new curriculum. And the course, if anything, was even harder. But that really made an impact on me and how that mental management, because I used it. Probably the biggest thing I applied outside of my transition was to help me through a lot of issues, divorce, losing my first business. That stuff all was extremely helpful. So I'm like really grateful for that. But I decided to get out because I just hit burnout, total burnout, and my marriage was struggling. My kids were younger, and I was like, I just want to be. And then I saw like guys that had done 25, 30 years. Their bodies were complete wreck. They had no relationship with their family, and I was like, I don't want to be this guy.
Yeah.
And so I said and back to my first time on the scuba diving boat, I was like, okay, I'm not having fun anymore. I need to do something different. So I got out. I did a little bit of contracting for the Intel community, and then got into startups, and then writing, which got me into blogging and media. And then that's how I sold my first book right when Chris Kyle and my book came out like a couple weeks after his did. And it was like, just, that was good timing. And yeah, I never kind of looked back. And, now I have a great relationship with my kids. Even I get along with my ex and her new husband. Even I've cooked holiday dinner for them both twice they live now in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, nice. I'm in Seattle. So
yeah, no, I love that part of the world. But yeah, that I know we're probably over time, but that's kind of my story. I just kind of reinvented myself, and after COVID, I decided to travel. I went back to I sold the e-commerce company, and I went back. It was a success and a lot of like pain because it grew too fast, and I learned a lot of lessons. And I went back to business school. I went to a special program at HBS for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I saw that. That's amazing.
For 2 years. That was incredible. And then I decided, okay, I'm gonna like, where do I want to live and fly my plane? And I thought about Miami. I bought a place in Miami, and then it's like, yeah, the flying is really boring there because you're up and you're looking down at swamp all day. I was like, this is not fun. And so I had a couple friends move to Portugal, and it's very much like California climate. And they make it really easy for US expats to live here. And then that's when I decided I'm going to give Portugal a try. So I've been here 2 years.
How long have you been there now?
I've been here 2 years. I have my plane over here. I crated it over on a shipping container, took the wings off.
Oh, wow.
And
everything
I'm still
turned out okay?
Yeah. I had a US mechanic help me put it back together. And,
nice.
And it's been really fun. I haven't really fully explored flying Europe, but I've flown to Spain and all over Portugal. And this summer, I want to do like a whole southern kind of Europe tour, France, south of France, Switzerland, Italy, even Croatia. Looking forward to that. And yeah, my kids are doing amazing. My son he's 23, has a successful tech startup. He's an AI whiz kid. So he's a property tech
now. That's awesome.
All the kids are great. And yeah, I'm just, like, as like there's always ups and downs in life, but you really, you can't have like, enjoy the happiness with all the crappy stuff, it's just required. Yeah, you need that contrast. So, but other than that, life's pretty good.
No, that's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing all that. A couple things. So, with all the guests, I have them jump back into the helicopter as a rescue swimmer. I give you a scenario, and you just take me through your mindset. You want
Go
to
for
play?
it, man. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I chat GPT'd a bunch of different scenarios. So
Pulling
today,
breakers.
today we're going to do a submerged aircraft rescue in enemy waters. Okay. So here's the
Okay.
scenario. A Navy jet crashes into the ocean near a hostile zone. The pilot ejects but is trapped in the sinking fuselage. You're the rescue swimmer. You're doing starboard D. You get the call. What's going through your head?
Um, well, I'm really not concerned about the hostile like waters because you kind of got the whole battle group protecting you. I'm concerned like, hey, what? And I'm like, I don't know, am I the swimmer or the crew chief?
Oh yeah.
Swimmer? Okay,
Yep.
so I'm the swimmer. I'm thinking, okay, like how is he trapped in the fuselage? Is the parachute lines wrapped around the fuselage of the body? What's that look like? Because that's kind of a mess, right? As you know, you have all the shroud
Mhm.
lines. Um, but I mean, in this day or night.
What do you? We'll
Cool.
go day. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's the
Okay.
only
Yeah.
information
No,
I
I
got.
mean, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, okay, sea state, and this, I got to get this guy out of here super fast, right? This fuselage is going to sink at some point. It's going to go down, and when it does, it's going to go down fast. So, yeah, it's just thinking about that mental picture, um, and getting over there and getting this guy out. And I think the key thing is, do you cut the shroud lines or you do get him out of the harness? And that's just something you're going to have to like wait and see what it looks like underwater.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. But I don't like I jump into that all day long.
Same.
Yeah,
That's crazy when you talk about like shroud lines and when we went through RSS, it was the equipment they use compared to like what they use now. I think even when we went through, we were probably going through like Vietnam era harnesses and
yeah,
none of the what are those things called where they
quick
fire?
release.
Yeah, we'd have to manually do all of those every day, and they'd be wrapping shroud lines around their neck and everything. Like worst case scenario, right?
Yeah,
But you still try. No, it's kind of fun. It's been decades since you've been in that role, but it's still fun to
yeah,
just kind of like jog the memory and go back to that place because it's a fun job. It's exciting.
yeah. I mean, ejection is brutal too. Like a lot of these guys have spine injuries, so
Mhm.
that's a consideration as well.
Yeah,
Put them on a
nowadays, I
litter.
mean, everyone's going in a litter, so
Yeah,
I think it's still like at the discrepancy, and I know our NATOPS, that was definitely the case when we went through. But yeah, no, nice job. You saved everybody.
good.
You're a hero. Well, cool, Brandon. Um, Before we go, so you've had just crazy amounts of experiences. You're not even started. There's so many more things that you're going to do, but just based on everything that you've done and just the experiences that most people will never understand because they're just not in these roles. What is one bit of wisdom that you would leave the listeners with? Something you've gleaned along the way?
I would, I think something we talked about earlier was just the importance of being consistent, I think is super valuable. And that doesn't just apply to career. I'm very proud father of three, and my kids are, I have people in my business community that meet my kids. And actually, my next book, I'm going to write a book on parenting
Hmm.
because they asked me, like, what did you do with your kids? And I think just I was very consistent as a father, always like very focused on my time with them when I did have them, because they live with their mom. The decision we made was they would live full time with her, and I would get them on all the big holidays, and then I would take them on individual trips throughout the year. But I was extremely consistent dad, and they would say that, today my kids would all say the same.
Mhm.
But and in career as well, like consistency. And I would also say when you think about a professional career, I think it's important to really like I don't know, it's just my opinion, but I think people who are successful are always have goals in mind, right? I run into people that are like, oh, I don't plan for anything. I just live my day one day at a time.
Just
But
flounder.
yeah, they just kind of flounder around. And as a career, like there's people that have different jobs, and then there's this culmination of experiences and jobs that actually make a career. And
Hmm.
those two are very different, right?
Yeah.
And so I would just say, make a habit of setting goals and achieving them, even small goals, and being very consistent. And then over time, you'll end up with this career, like a
Hmm.
successful, probably successful career. But yeah, goal setting, being consistent, being like it. To have good kids, you got to be a good parent. To have good friends, you have to actually be a good friend and show up for your friends.
Yeah.
And then also realize when some people don't reciprocate. I've had to leave a lot of people behind just because
Hmm.
they're not putting forward the effort as I am. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's kind of what comes to mind.
No, that's great. So much wisdom bundled in, and you're right, that consistency. I'd say even the goal setting, it's not just in career, it's in your relationships and
Yeah.
having all these little micro goals, and before you know it,
Every every year I mean I read Bill Gates' biography, and he does this 1 week a year, and I basically do the same now. I this year I went to Kitzbühel, Austria. I skied by myself for a week, and then I set 2 days to just do my goals, and it was personal, family, business.
Yep.
Okay, what are my 1 year goals? What does the 5 years look like? But every year I do that, and
Yeah.
I may not hit all of them, but generally I'm going in the right direction.
Right. And it's okay to course correct because you're
Yeah,
you're spending that time making goals based on whatever's in your head or experiences, but life changes, right? So I
yeah,
mean, that's okay. I think it's just not okay to not have goals
yeah,
because that's a
yeah,
sad life. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for
yeah,
spending
Brian.
lots of time and just
Pleasure,
catching
man.
up. It was
Yeah,
great to have you on here.
yeah, anytime. So when I get that parenting book, I'd love to come back when I get that one finished.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely have you back on. You have lots of experiences and wisdom and just well spoken and have a great smile. And
Thanks, man. I
all
still have
right.
all my hair. I have all my hair
I know.
still.
Wow, it's
That's good.
amazing. Cool. And for everyone else, we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.